Hello and welcome to part 2 of attempting to rebuild my totaled Chevy Silverado. So if you're here for the last part, you'll remember that we pretty much just ripped the whole front end apart. We got the front clip off, front bumper, hood, and fenders. We even got the intake manifold off so that we can strap the engine hoist to it. I even attempted to take the transfer case out last time. However, that didn't quite go to plan. It's still in there, being held in by one nut. So I'm gonna attempt to take that off today. And the main goal is gonna be to try to get the drivetrain out today. However, there's a couple things that I want to do before that. So let me show you what we're gonna do. So before we get to taking the drivetrain out, there are two major things that I want to take out. One would be all of the front suspension, and the other thing is the front axle. So this does not have a solid front axle, obviously, but it does have the front differential with sort of an axle shaft of sorts coming out the side of it. So it's kind of like a half of a solid axle with CV joints on either side. So that needs to come out, front suspension, and then we will attempt to take the engine and transmission out. And once that is all said and done, we should be right where we need to be. That will complete the stripping of the front end, and I can send the truck over to my frame repair guy, and we will get a whole new front frame welded on, and then we can begin the rebuild process. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with the top here and work my way down. I'm going to remove the upper control arm, the shock axle, and then finally the lower control arm. And that will completely detach the steering knuckle with the brakes from the frame. And of course, I will also have to disconnect my brake line as well and cap it off. Front control arm is pretty simple. We just have one 18mm nut down here, and then we have these, which I think are 21mm. And the good news is, I actually installed these quite recently, so this hardware should all come off pretty easily. Yep, nice and easy. So let's take a minute too to appreciate this 90-degree tie rod. That might cause some alignment issues. This bolt sure is stuck for only being in here for less than a year. All right, so that's all the hardware removed from the upper control arm. But before I fully remove it, I'm actually going to take the CV axle first, because this upper control arm kind of anchors the whole thing. If I take it out, this is just going to fall, and the steering knuckle is just going to be flopping all over the place, and it's going to make it very difficult to get the axle nut off. So I'm going to do that, and then we will take the upper control arm all the way out. So we just have to take this dust cover off. Now with the dust cover off, we have access to our nut. So this is a pretty big nut. It's a 36mm. And in order to keep the brakes from spinning, I'm actually gonna put this pry bar here and anchor it against the ground. And I'll take my 36mm socket and a breaker bar and crack this loose. Wrong way. And that is broken loose. So now take your 3-pound sledgehammer and just wail on it. So we're actually having a pretty unusual problem here. Normally this wouldn't be an issue, but I guess when your front end is smashed in, it is. The axle is actually hitting the shock, so I cannot push it out any further. So I may just have to remove the shock first, and then I can remove the axle. The problem is, if I was able to turn this outward like this, I could probably get that axle to slip past the shock, but everything's bound up. I can't turn this for the life of me. Actually, on second thought, I think what I'm going to do instead is disconnect the tie rod, and then that will allow me to turn the whole assembly out and get the axle away from the shock. So let's disconnect the outer tie rod from the steering knuckle. I didn't install these too long ago, like everything else, so it should actually come out fairly easy. Whoops, there it is. And then we'll see if it pops off. And there you have it. Now I can spin this and get the axle away from the shock and pop it out. And that's one axle out. All right, now that the axle is out, I'll remove the control arm the rest of the way. All I have to do is disconnect this wheel speed sensor from it, which it just clips in right here. I always put the bolts back in their holes so that I don't forget where they came from, as often as possible anyway. And now let's see if this thing will come loose. Again with our 5 pounds or 3 pounds, oh actually this is a 4-pound sled. You might be noticing the mistake I've made here. I should have popped the ball joint loose before loosening the bushing bolts up, because now I can't really hit this quite as hard because these are just moving away from the frame. So I might actually put these back in here and just kind of slide a bolt through. Oh, never mind. There it goes. Almost took my knee out. And control arm is out. Now I can really take a good look at this thing, and believe it or not, I don't think this thing is bent whatsoever. I think I'm going to reuse this. All right, so now I'm going to take the shock out, which is very easy. Bolt a nut here, and then one nut up here. Now we'll zip that the rest of the way out. And then I'll take this top nut off. And thankfully, once again, these shocks appear to be in good shape, so that means I will definitely be reusing them. One little trick that I'll show you with these nuts here, this is a nylon locking nut, and they can be quite difficult to remove, especially when they've been on there for a while. And the problem is when you try to spin it, it spins the whole shock with it. So what you can do is heat it up with a torch, and you'll actually melt the nylon, and it'll come off a lot easier. Just be careful not to melt your rubber here. And just like that, now you can see the nylon has all melted and is bubbling out, so now it'll be a lot easier to remove. All right, let's see if I can zip this thing the rest of the way off now. There we go. There it is. All right, so now the last step here is going to be this lower control arm here, which I'm just going to start by disconnecting it from the knuckle so that I can get the knuckle out of the way. And then comes the complicated part of the lower control arm, which if the bent bolts weren't hard enough, I also have to take the torsion bar out. But before I do that, it might be a good idea to get this brake hose out of here. So I'm gonna do that real quick. This is an 11mm bolt. Just gonna zip that off real quick. Or maybe not. Never mind, I forgot that these have been on here for an eternity. There we go. I'm just going to make sure I put a rag under here to catch all the escaping brake fluid, and then take this the rest of the way off. Now unfortunately there isn't really a good way to plug off these banjo bolts, so I'm probably just going to have to let it leak into the pan for a while until it stops leaking. All right, now I just have to disconnect the line from the steering knuckle. And I'll let that line just sit in the bucket there. And once again, put my bolt back where I found it. All right, so update. I'm actually leaving the lower control arm and the torsion bars both in the truck because the frame guy was just here and I spoke with him. So he took a look at the frame, and I'll show you guys in a second what we're gonna do. He actually came up with a plan for it. We're actually gonna leave the lower control arms in and the torsion bars because these are likely bent. Which I didn't really consider before, and there's almost no point in taking them off because the front frame is going to be completely cut off, and I do not need to save these control arms, so I'm just going to leave them on. There's no point in taking them off. I'm going to have to get new ones, and they're going to get bolted to the new frame section. So a little bit less work to do today, which I'm not complaining about. So both sides are staying on. All I'm going to do now is go to the other side and take apart everything that I just took apart over here, because all those parts I am. And then after that, we will remove the front axle. So despite the obvious severe bend right here, and also the fact that this section of the frame is tweaked, if you go underneath and you look at the frame dead on, it might be hard to see on camera, but the top of the frame is out like that. all the way up to right about here. So the frame is actually going to have to get replaced from probably about here forward, as opposed to up there by the welds. So it is going to be a little bit more work for him. He's going to have to take the cab off now, but it's still all fixable. It is all doable. And in the words of my boss, there's nothing that money can't fix. So the next step in our process here is going to be removing this front sort of axle thing here, because the oil pan comes down right behind it. And in order for me to take the engine and transmission straight out this way, the way that I want to, that is going to have to come out, otherwise the oil pan will hit it. So I'm going to take that out. So the first thing I have to do here is remove this under tray, which is just a few 15mm bolts. And out that goes. So it looks like on the front axle here, we have 2 nuts here, and then we have 1 bolt going through this bushing here, and then another bushing up top here. So I have to remove both of those bolts and then these 2 nuts here, and the axle should come right out. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to disconnect this electrical connector first. That has what appears to be a broken wire. Interesting, and it's full of sand. All right, let's see if it wants to come out now. All right, so very strange and unusual problem number 500. Since the whole frame is pushed in, the steering box is sitting way further back than it normally would, and the pitman arm is in the front differential. And that is stopping me from taking the differential out. So I need to figure out some way to get the pitman arm away from the differential. I already tried turning the steering wheel, and the wheel does not want to turn. I'll try turning it a little bit harder and see where that gets me. Well, I got some movement out of it. Let's see. Oh, maybe I should go the other way. That seemed promising. Well, I'd say that it's almost there. A little more, maybe. Oh, that was something breaking. How are we looking? Well, it's definitely a lot further away now. Maybe just a tad more. I'm not too sure what just broke in the steering column, but the steering column is junk anyway. Well, that kind of helps, except now the center link is also hitting it. It almost seems like that made it worse, because now the center link seems to be a lot closer. Let me try going back the other way. Oh, that hasn't really gone in my favor. I'm gonna try to jack the differential up away from it. Maybe I can pry the differential away from it. Oh! Well, that definitely got it away. Let's see what happens now. It definitely looks like it's still gonna hit. This is making this very difficult. And you might be thinking, why don't you just remove the pitman arm? Well, up north here, that is not really an option, because that thing is not going to come off. And you know what? That actually got it pretty far away. Still hits it though. We're getting closer. No cigar just yet though. Let's see if I can just lower it down now. Oh, it's stuck. There it goes. That sure was a battle. I feel like that's normally supposed to be a lot easier. So the engine harness is tucked out of the way for the most part. All that's left is there is some of the harness on the transmission, but I think it's going to be a little bit easier to deal with that once I pull the drivetrain out a little bit, so I'm going to leave that for now. Off camera, I did end up pulling the transfer case out. I'm now just going to do a little bit of cleanup here, get some of these parts out of here so that I can make way for the engine hoist, and we're going to see if we can get this drivetrain out. Well, as you can see, it's now dark out. It's been about an hour or so since that last clip. I decided to go inside and eat some dinner. So safe to say the engine and transmission aren't coming out today. I'll probably try and tackle that tomorrow. All that is left though is unbolting the transmission mounts and the engine mounts, and this thing should come right out. And I also do have to disconnect the transmission wiring harness, but that's not a big deal. That'll be quick. So that being said, I will see you in the daylight. It is now, in fact, not the next day. It is a week later. I got super busy, and it also rained all day Sunday, so I didn't really want to work on this. But we're back now. We're gonna get the engine and transmission out finally. I'm gonna start by disconnecting the exhaust, and then I will disconnect the engine mount and transmission mount and the rest of the wiring, and it should come out. Cleaning and stuff.
The vacation place that me and her are going to?
Holy cow, this is not good.
My side's pretty open. I don't know about yours. Do those next.
Holy cow, this is gonna break. Why is, dude, this got so rusty. It was not rusty when I left it. Ugh. There it is, broken.
I actually like when they break.
No, yeah, it makes it easier.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, let me get you a mic, man. I think it should be on.
And that's it.
Should be, yeah, it's connected.
Now I'm mic'd up, yo.
Now you're mic'd up, yo.
Brother.
Just ignore it.
It's gonna fall off. I'm gonna lose the magnet.
No, mine hasn't fallen off yet.
It hasn't?
No, dude, I was like crawling underneath this thing, and I had the thing on when I was taking the transfer case out. Oh, yeah, it took the stud with it. All right, so here's where we're at now. We've done a bit of work to this thing off camera. Everything has kind of sucked, so I didn't really record any of it. But so we've unbolted the motor mounts on both sides. I
hawked a loogie in the microphone.
Engine and transmission mounts are unbolted. We got the exhaust manifolds out, which was no easy task. The starter's unhooked. All the ground straps are off. This thing is ready to come out.
You want it to be one smooth action, you know? Act busy, you know what I mean?
We gotta look like we know what we're doing. Which we kind of do to some extent, but not really.
I've pulled many in engines.
I've only pulled 2. No, I pulled several. I've pulled a few mini engines and a GMC. So it didn't move at all when I first did this.
It's just because you gotta give her the goods.
Yeah? Oh, well, it moved a little. Yeah, I want to make sure it's free from these mounts here. Oh, yeah.
I'll put some pressure on it and then we can shake it around a bit.
Yeah, we'll just kind of... Wow. That's what 40 miles an hour does, I guess.
I can't believe how stuck that thing is.
Me neither.
Oh.
Ah, okay. It's just stuck, dude. It's just...
Find somewhere to pry over
the
there.
thing's just lodged against, like, everything. Pretty good. This dude's useless.
That's all I ever thought whenever I heard this song. I was like, wow, this dude's like, I would not want to have this guy around.
Oh, hey. Oh, dude. Oh, there it is.
See if it goes up anymore.
I feel like it should now. What?
Somehow, no. Oh, there we go. Oh. I'm just gonna give this a lot. Oh yeah, here we
No,
go.
you're lifting the truck.
Am I really?
Yes, you're lifting the truck off the jacks.
Wow, we didn't do anything.
No. It's sitting on something.
This is gonna move.
No, it's not. What did you do? Okay.
That's it.
Leave it. Just leave it there. Leave it like this all week.
No, we'll get it down on the ground. All right.
That is heavy.
That's a lot of weight right there.
That is a lot of weight.
Cast
man.
iron blocks, dude.
Cast iron block with a 4L60E attached to
Yeah,
it.
get this side.
We could just honestly leverage this thing all the way over there.
That is how the ancient Egyptians worked on their
That's how
Cadillac
they-
Chevys.
I was gonna say something intelligent, like, yeah, that's how they built the pyramids. Nope. Okay. Oh, I think the transmission fluid all drained out. Oh, no, it didn't. There we go.
Well, you removed its soul. Now it's actually dead.
It's legitimately dead now.
That's the heartbeat of America right there. Here's what I'm thinking.
I gotta take a pic, dude, that, the slope.
Take a picture. You're taking a video, dude.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you have it. That is one 5.3 4L60E combo removed. Well, there you have it. The hardest part is done. The engine and transmission are out, which was quite a nightmare because everything was pushed so far back into the firewall. Nothing wanted to come out. Nothing came out the way that it normally would. Made it much more difficult. But it is out. It is over. And the question is, what is next? For the most part, it's just going to be waiting. My frame guy is booked out about 5 to 6 months or so. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the engine and transmission. And the engine, I'm going to actually do a minor rebuild on, which I figured it's out, so I might as well. So I'm not going to do a full rebuild. I'm not going to go too crazy, but the plan is to do rod bearings, lifters, and a complete reseal, which obviously includes head gaskets and all the other stuff. So that is what I'm going to do in the meantime, along with removal of the steering shaft too, because the steering shaft is collapsed. And I will show that in the video too, because I think there's going to be some interesting carnage to see there. But other than that, once again, I'm just going to be waiting until the frame guy comes to pick this thing up. And then once that happens, he said that it should take no more than maybe 2 to 3 weeks or so. So once I get it back from him, that is when I will start my reassembly, which is very exciting and I can't wait. So thank you guys for watching, and come back for part 3 when I tear this engine down.